What's up, everybody? Matt Gajewski here, back again talking college football. It's week 2. It's the Friday slate. We have a double header. Before we get into it, if you like this content, please consider subscribing, leaving a like. Those two things are free, and they help us out immensely. Small channel like this, it really does help us get in front of more people as we try to grow and make this something sustainable. If you have any feedback, leave it in the comments. I'll ask you guys to request games for our Greasy video coming up later this week, Thursday or Friday. That's where we talk, G5, Max, Sunbelt, maybe some of the bad P4 teams. So if you want to see a game that we didn't break down in the first video, request it below. I'll get to as many as I can, trying to go faster on those games. Last thing, if you or someone you know has a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. We're talking sides and totals in the predictions, so just want to get that out there. Doubleheader on deck. Kicking off with an amazing game. James Madison takes on Louisville. This is one of the teams, short list of teams that could represent the G5 in the playoff, and James Madison. Louisville, obviously a contender in the ACC. On the screen, you're seeing a lot of metrics. Pass rate and pace don't calculate till these teams play FBS teams. They both played FCS in week 1. And then all of the rankings you see, they're on a scale of 1 to 136. That's how many FBS teams there are. It's really volatile right now. For example, both these teams played FCS teams. Ohio State and Texas played each other. We try to capture level of competition and adjust, but it's still tricky when you have one game samples with a crazy difference in strength of opponent. So in this contest, Louisville is a 13.5-point favorite. James Madison has already taken some money. The total in the game is 58.5. As far as what these teams did previously, both beat up on FCS. James Madison played Weber State, won 45-10. Honestly, it could have been worse. They only allowed 2.6 yards per play, but this was a really sloppy game, especially on the James Madison side. They fumbled at their own 18. That gave an immediate touchdown to Weber State. They had a turnover on down at their own 31 that gave them a field goal. James Madison missed a field goal. They also had a turnover on down just outside the opposing team's red zone. So they left a lot of points on the board, and they handed, just straight up, basically gave the ball to Weber State in scoring position twice, giving them 10 points. This team could have easily shut out Weber State otherwise. So you take care of some of those mistakes, and you have an even better-looking James Madison team. And then on the Louisville side, they beat up on Eastern Kentucky. The average margin of victory in this game was actually 54 points, more than Louisville actually scored. They allowed 2.8 yards per play to Eastern Kentucky, so it's exactly what you want to see. They had 3 turnovers as well, so another ugly game. And actually, Miller Moss had 2 interceptions, 0 turnover-worthy plays. You go back and you look at both of those passes, both of them were tipped up into the air by the receivers. So kind of a bad run-out for Miller Moss. He's immediately working with no turnover-worthy plays and 2 interceptions on the year. This is the Peyton Thorne stat so far. And then the 3rd interception was Brady Allen, so not really much to be seen there. Both these teams absolutely slaughtered their opponents, and they kind of both did what we thought they should outside of a few sloppy plays. Injuries in this game, it's looking pretty clean. Just Nate Kariski for Louisville is out at tight end. James Madison doesn't have the best reporting, but Alonzo Barnett played. We didn't know if he was going to. 9 months off the season-ending injury, but he's back. And we'll start there because it was a decent showing for him. 63.5% completion, 5.9 yards per attempt, 0 big-time throws, 1 turnover-worthy play. He did rush for 30 yards, taking 1 sack. The O-line did a good job, just a 14% pressure rate. It was kind of a decent performance for Barnett. I'm expecting him to get better as he's just further removed from the injury. The only other thing to mention, they had packages for Matt Sluka, the UNLV transfer, who obviously has continuity with this coaching staff going back to the FCS days. It's kind of going to be a package, I think, for him throughout the season. And overall, I think the QB room will get better, but the skill position players are almost, without a doubt, worse. You just look at who he's throwing to. I mean, James Madison trots out Landon Ellis and Nick DeGarno. Both of these players come from Richmond, so 2 FCS receivers. Braden Wislowski comes in from Maryland. Isaiah Alston from Iowa State and Army. This receiving group is pretty lackluster, especially compared to last year and how many players they lost and what you could actually depend on. Logan Kyle was decent at tight end, but I wasn't surprised to see this unit take a step back, and I think that's probably going to be the case against some harder opponents. The run game is very good, though. George Pettaway, 9.9 yards per carry. Wayne Knight came in for a good change of pace, over 10. And the offensive line is pretty good. I think the best way for them to win games long-term is lean on this run game. lean on your offensive line. And they did lose 3 starters, but they returned 4 with starting experience because of injury. All 4 of the returners were above average. Your new starter, Zach Greenberg from North Carolina. So this has the makings of one of the best G5 offensive lines. I think first and foremost, just take the ball out of Barnett's hands as much as you can. Don't rely on these receivers. Your running backs are good. Like George Pettaway is a North Carolina transfer himself going back a few years. So that's how I think they can win. As far as Louisville's defense, this unit returned 4 starters overall, with linebacker being their strongest position. Stanquan Clark and TJ Quinn are back. On the defensive line, Rene Conga is huge, and he was injured last year, so getting him back is good. Jordan Garrod is also a pretty good defensive lineman. A lot of the best players they have are in that front 7. They went to the portal and bolstered it with Clev Lubin from Coastal and Wesley Bailey from Rutgers, who was hurt last year. My biggest question is the secondary. They have a couple decent returning starters in Hutchinson and Watts, but then the portal additions and the guys they started in particular are kind of lackluster. JoJo Evans from FIU, Jabari Mack from Jacksonville State. Yeah, it leaves a little bit to be desired. But again, I don't think that is the way that James Madison is typically attacking you, especially with the mobile signal callers and that run game they're trying to utilize. That's kind of the worst way to approach this Louisville defense right now. So I think just on paper, Louisville's defense has quite a few edges against this James Madison offense as they kind of retool the skill players. On the other side, Miller Moss, 71% completion percentage, 9.3 yards per attempt, 3 big-time throws, 0 turnover-worthy plays. Again, the 2 interceptions, they were both tipped by receivers that probably should have been caught. He's not mobile, but he did have 8 rushing yards. That's just because he didn't take any sacks. The O-line did a good job. It was against an FCS team. It is what it is. I actually have some concerns with the O-line we'll get to. Just didn't show up against that level of opponent. And the skill position players, I think, are pretty good. You probably take a slight step back in the receiving game, just trying to replace Ja'Cory Brooks. They might not, though. Like Colin Lacey's coming off the red shirt. He battled injury last year. Chris Bell's been a fine receiver for them in the past. I don't think they really have a difference maker at tight end. But the best players in this offense, at least the skill players, are Isaac Brown, 21 yards per carry against the FCS team. And then Duke Watson. He didn't play as well in their first game, but still a dynamic pair of running backs. And that's how they're going to win. Their offensive line lost 4 starters. The only player they return is Pete Nigra, their center. He's a former Northern Illinois transfer. They're starting 2 incumbents that are inexperienced in Rasheed Miller and Lance Robinson. The 2 transfers they're playing are Mikaelin Pounders from Mississippi State and Mohamed Musa for Purdue. I think they leave a lot to be desired. And their run game, really, 109th, they came out after their first contest against an FCS team. This is a unit that's probably going to take a step back. I don't think it's going to be drastic, but the O-line was a strength of the team last year. Now it might just be a little more neutral towards average for this team. I don't think it really is going to show up against James Madison. We'll see, though. There's some volatility to this defense. They lose 7 starters. They do have a pretty good defensive line, at least on the interior. Emmanuel Bush and Terry Lockett, I think, are good run defenders. The edge room is pretty weak, though. They didn't add a lot, and they're losing quite a bit. So I'm not sure how that pass rush is going to turn out. They ended up 52nd in total pass rush efficiency after playing an FCS team week 1. So it didn't quite live up to expectation there. Linebacker room is definitely unproven with Trent Hendrick and Gannon Weatherby. The secondary, you bring back 2 full-time starters. The 2 unproven players, Tyler Brown and Justin Eaglin, look good against an FCS team, but I still want to see more. And then their final starter, they put out a St. Francis transfer in Mekhi Rogers. The defense to me is definitely worse. You smash Weber State. That's kind of exactly up to expectation. But what are you going to do now when you're facing Louisville, who has players with NFL aspirations on this team? They continually put them out under this Braum offense. We still show a little value on James Madison again, even for all of the holes you can poke in this team, the changes they're going through. This is still one of the best FCS teams in the country. The problem is mathematically we make this about 12.5, 13.5, so we can squeeze a little juice out of this, 12.5, 13, I should say. But if you want to look at a total, we make this right on 58, so we're looking at an under as well. They're very slight edges both ways, whether you're playing the total or the side. There's only 2 games on the slate, so I understand some of you are going to play this regardless. I guess I'll finish with this. It is a James Madison or pass. It is an under or pass. For me, just don't show quite enough on either side. I missed the 14.5. I would need at least the 14 to potentially consider a JMU side in this game. Game number 2 is a little uglier. It is Northern Illinois taking on Maryland. This game has a 17.5 point spread in favor of Maryland, a 47 total. A little bit ugly. Both these teams, I guess it was the difference in Northern Illinois looked horrible against Holy Cross. Maryland looked awesome against an inept FAU team. More on that in a second. Let's start with Northern Illinois. So they beat Holy Cross 19-17, a 56% post-game win expectancy. Yards per play was dead even at 4 apiece. Both teams had kick return touchdowns in this game, so it speaks to how little offense got going. Holy Cross missed 2 field goals. Northern Illinois missed an extra point. You have concerns on special teams with both of these squads. It was a complete disaster of a game. Northern Illinois, they passed 34% of the time and played extremely slow. I think that's going to be their offense throughout the year. Meanwhile, Maryland beat FAU and beat them bad, and I was on FAU in that game. Just a complete disaster. But honestly, if you run it back, I'm not sure they win by that much every time. They won the turnover battle 6-0. They outgained FAU 4.9 yards per play to 3.8, but that just kind of speaks to it. Maryland's offense wasn't all that efficient themselves. It's just that they were gifted a lot of possessions in scoring position where they could take advantage of short fields. Now, that also affects your yards per play. If you only have a short distance to travel, you're not going to have explosive plays. But FAU also went 3 of 9 on 4th downs, just a complete meltdown from the Owls. So I'm not really sure what we have with Maryland yet. This is not a team I was buying heading into the year. As far as stylistics go, they play very fast and they passed 61% of the time. I thought they were going to slow down and be a little more run heavy under Pep Hamilton. They didn't do that. They continued the same approach that they've done for years now under Loxley. Let's start with Northern Illinois. This team was pretty good last year. I mean, they knocked off Notre Dame, faded a little bit late. They have Josh Holst as their quarterback, who is more of a runner typically, at least has some mobility. 66.5% completion, 5.6 yards per attempt, no big time throws, 1 turnover worthy play, which led to an interception. The pressure rate was 37%, and somehow he didn't take any sacks. But just this infrastructure is so bad. I think he's just not working with enough to legitimately compete. I don't even know if he can compete in the MAC, let alone against Maryland. The skill position players were decent against Holy Cross, an FCS team, but here's who they're relying on. Like Shavon Wright, their running back, who looked good, 7 yards per carry. He's a Charleston Southern transfer. That's Division II. Their top wide receivers, De'Ari Rogers and Gary Givens, are from Valparaiso and Lenore-Rhine. They lost Trayvon Rudolph late in the process. I just don't think they have enough players to actually compete even in the MAC. You can't be looking at these low-level FCS and Division II players. Even if they look decent against Holy Cross, it's not enough. Like Telly Johnson, 3.2 yards per carry. Jalen, it was a 3-man committee at running back. Jalen Poe was the second leading receiver with 24 yards. Rogers had 73, but he was the only wide receiver with a catch. And Jake Applegate at tight end, they only had 1 catch to tight ends. This is a complete mess. The offensive line has 1 returning starter, a unit that historically has been good for Northern Illinois. They develop a lot of talent. They take a lot of kids from Wisconsin. I don't know what Wisconsin's doing, but that's a story for another day. Anyway, they've just been gutted. I mean, their offensive line is basically just going to incumbents. And I don't know. They typically are able to develop these players, but it's 1 here, it's 1 there. It's not 4 in 1 season. So I'm not really optimistic in the offensive line this year. They came in 111th in run blocking against an FCS team. That's not great. And what they're facing on defense, like I don't think Maryland's defense is quite that good. In the Big Ten, I think they're honestly going to struggle a lot. They have 2 returning starters. They're both safeties, Jalen Husky and Levain Scruggs. I will say there is some untapped upside. They went with a lot of youth. They went with a lot of high recruits. They started 2 freshmen off the edge. Zahir Mathis is a 4-star freshman. Probably a little bit of questions early on, but I mean, it gives you some upside. And then the interior, I think they're a little worse, but Cam Rice came in from Ohio. He's okay. At linebacker, replacing Hyperlate's not going to be easy, but Daniel Wingate is back. They started a 4-star Kevin Humes in the secondary, along with Jonte Joyner and Jamari Glasker from Arkansas State and Wake Forest. The secondary is probably the best unit. The edge has some upside. And honestly, like I know that this isn't the most talented defense in the Big Ten, but you have like 4 stars at various positions. It's just too much for a Northern Illinois team to overcome in this game. So I'm not really favoring their offense at all. I think they struggle to score. They struggled to score against Holy Cross and needed a kick return touchdown to even get to where they were. On the Maryland side, it was a pretty good performance from Malik Washington right away. Positive, 4-star, but he has the luxury of facing an FCS team where some of our other friends that started against Ohio State and Texas didn't quite fare so well. So yeah, he was supposed to look like a stud. He did. 63% completion, 6 yards per attempt, 3 big-time throws, 1 turnover-worthy play. He didn't rush a single time in the game, but he also didn't take a sack. So he comes out with 0 rush yards, 19% pressure rate. I mean, I called FAU an FCS team. They're obviously not, but they basically played like it. Ultimately, like these stats from Malik Washington are pretty good. They're nothing that are like eye-popping. So it was a good debut for him, kind of what we were looking for. Nothing crazy on either side. He didn't wow us beyond expectation or disappoint. His skill players are worse than what Maryland had last year, but they're still pretty good. Nolan Ray, DeJuan Williams, neither of them were particularly good. Williams at 5.4 yards per carry, Nolan Ray at 3.1, but they definitely did not live up to what Monangai gave them. Their receivers do have some talent. Shalik Knotts is a former 4-star, kind of been a disappointment to this point in his career. Farouk from Oklahoma, just often injured. Caleb Webb from Tennessee could never really get on the field there. Dorian Fleming from Georgia State, he was awesome, but now needs to make the jump from the Sun Belt to the Big Ten. Overall, I thought it was a decent output for all of them. Nothing crazy. They both all 4 of them kind of did exactly what they were supposed to do. The biggest concern with Maryland long-term is this offensive line. They were the worst Power 4 offensive line in the country last year, and they're on the short list to be the worst again this year. They return 2 awful starters. They get back Isaiah Wright from injury. Might seem good on paper, but he's a Buffalo transfer to begin with. Your 2 tackles are from Central Connecticut and Shorter. If you don't know Shorter, that's a Division II school. This is just an unserious offensive line. Against FAU, it didn't matter, but moving forward, it's probably going to. Will it matter against Northern Illinois? The answer is still probably no. This defense is horrible. They returned 3 starters. 2 of them were on the edge, so like Jelani Williams and Roy Williams. If there's a group that gives this Maryland team trouble, it's probably those 2. But on the interior, you're starting Deshaun Dixon from Albany. Your linebacker position was already a mess, and they didn't get better. In your secondary, you're starting Jasper Beeler from Saginaw Valley. Like, what is this defense? The only player who started in the secondary at an above-average level was Jacob Finley. They lost a ton. Basically, the defense, first of all, they lost their DC, so that's a huge concern. Took some pieces with him. And a lot of these guys transferred up. Like, they took a defensive lineman to Texas Tech. So much of the talent that got Northern Illinois to really just an above 500 record last year was the defense, and a lot of them are gone. So honestly, I'm not sure they can get stops on Maryland either. Where this line comes in and why it's hard to handicap is you really need to play with the quarterback efficiency from Malik Washington. He's a 4-star, and these players as freshmen are expected to be pretty good. And honestly, what he did against FAU was not enough to upgrade him significantly when you start looking at the efficiency metrics, like 6.0 yards per attempt, 1 turnover-worthy play, no rushing output. Yeah, he looked good, but it's like, can we really elevate him to the top signal callers in the country? And that's kind of what you have to do if you're going to get a cover on a 17.5. We make this line closer to about a 15, which I don't like either. But I mean, we're talking a couple key numbers here, especially at the 17.5, with this game probably going to come in a little slower. At least that's what Northern Illinois is going to try to do. If they can sustain any drives, it's going to be a slow game. That's not something I'm confident in, and Maryland will play fast. So even, taking the points with Northern Illinois is scary to me. If you're looking at the total, it's under or pass. And that honestly has me a little concerned too, because Maryland is a team that could, with the way they play, if they're having success, they could score 47 by themselves. Right now, the implied total, they just need to score about 33 for this to come in. But we make the total ourselves come in right around 46.5-ish. It's pretty close to 47, so we're not showing much value there. Between the 2 games, the side we show by far, and total will include those 2, that we show the most value on is Northern Illinois. But it's just like, after seeing that offense and defense, can you really go and put your hard-earned American dollars on the Huskies right now? The answer for me is no. So this is one we'll wait and see what happens. Probably we'll play just some props. If you're interested in those, they'll be in Discord. But it's kind of a weird slate. The one I'm honestly closest to betting is James Madison. And that's the one we show less value on. So that's where we sit as we head into the Friday night slate. Again, leave some requests if you guys want to see games on the greasy slate, but that's about all I have. Thank you guys for watching. Until next time, we'll see you later, and good luck.